I get asked regularly in interviews these days, what kind of sexism did you encounter coming up through the ranks in advertising? And my response is always, a fish does not know what water is.
Hello and welcome to TEQ. This is your host, Carolina Milanesi, and today we are going to talk about women, power, and the business of being unapologetic. It's a word that I struggle to say because oftentimes I don't get to be it. But hey, I am a little bit starstruck and super nervous because the guest that I have today started her career in advertising, built a global agency from scratch in New York, was named Advertising Woman of the Year, and then decided to leave it all behind, walk away, and become one of the most outspoken leaders in the world, not just of advertising, but in really advocating for women in business. I'm talking about the amazing Cindy Gallop and the work that she has done tirelessly over the years to really lift women up in business and speaking about the truth that it is about running a business or getting funded or being able to come through the world of advertising if you are a woman or lead a business as a woman. She calls herself the Michael Bay of business. And I think by the end of our conversation, you'll know exactly why. Cindy, welcome to our conversation.
Thank you, Carolina. Thrilled to be here.
I am so delighted because I've been following you for a long time. We exchanged a few times conversations on X, and serendipitously, I was talking to Polly, who was on my podcast a few weeks ago, and she said that she's a good friend of mine. I said, "Well, would you mind making an introduction?" And here we are. I really want to start with your kind of path. You built a huge organization with BBH, the US operation of that company, and you started in advertising and you talked about women in business for a long time. What did that experience in corporate teach you about women in business?
So, I think my experience in the corporate world was very fortuitous in a couple of ways that most women's aren't. So, um, my so called successful career in advertising was entirely down to luck. I was very, very lucky. I was lucky on two fronts. The first is that I was never sexually harassed in a way that ended my career. And by the way, I was absolutely sexually harassed, but not in a scenario so many women have encountered, which is retaliation, being managed out of the agency, being managed out of the industry. And the second way in which I was lucky is that I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of female bosses I had in my entire corporate career, two. I virtually always worked for men, but I was lucky enough to work for men who saw my potential before I did, wanted me to succeed, actively championed me, and gave me every opportunity to do so. And that is not the experience of most women.
Yes.
My corporate experience was very atypical. But nevertheless, when I left the corporate world, I was able to look back on it and see how many constraints there were for women that I had not fully understood. I get asked regularly in interviews these days, you know, Cindy, what kind of sexism did you encounter coming up through the ranks in advertising? And my response is always, a fish does not know what water is. There was sexism all around me, and I never realized because it was the norm. And by the way, that is still the case for too many women in the corporate world today.
It's very interesting that you say that because similarly, at the beginning of my career, I was in the UK and I was working for an economic research company. And I had the person I was working with from my client side uh, call me and was like, "Oh, so what are you wearing today?" People were, "Well, it's just the way we do things in Europe." And you brush it off. I appreciate what you're saying about how, because I think not many women do that, how you didn't let your personal experience define your understanding of what other women were going through. Because because it didn't happen to you, it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to others, right? And I think that sometimes, especially in tech, we tend to do that. We dismiss just because we don't go through it ourselves. I'm curious from an ad industry perspective. There's talk of diversity, but the industry itself doesn't want to be diverse. And I think today, even less so. That is true about the tech industry as well. And being somebody who has tried to build a business where I help companies to be more diverse, um, the only path I found that remotely gets them interested is show them the money, show them the opportunity that diversity and understanding your diverse base of customers can bring to your business. Do you think that is the only way, or do you think about it differently? How do we get people to actually care?
No, that is the only way, but not in the way that you're talking about.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, so many years ago, I spoke at a tech conference in Dublin, Ireland, called InspireFest.
Mm.
InspireFest was started by the editor of Silicon Republic, a woman at the time, specifically to counter the white male dominated Web Summit, which was still taking place in Dublin at the time. And so, 70% of InspireFest speakers were female, all of them were diverse. And it was a 2 day conference, and I was one of the final speakers. And I came out on stage and I said to the audience, we've just spent the last couple of days talking about all of the barriers that face all of us
Mhm.
as female and diverse founders in tech. I said, you have no idea how magically those barriers melt away, how rapidly those barriers completely disappear when we prove we can make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. And the reason I say that is not the same as argument as yours,
Mhm.
Caroline, it's because this is not about talking about how diversity is going to make money. Okay, rational arguments prove nothing.
Yeah.
We've had the facts and figures for decades that prove that diverse founders, are more successful, that we create better businesses. The white men don't give a shit.
Mhm.
Okay? The only thing that changes that is when we actively prove we can make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. One of my fundamental principles is I'm all about communication through demonstration.
Mhm.
Say it, be it, do it, show it.
Yeah, because I think something else that you have said over the years is that men get hired based on prospect and opportunity, and women have to prove before they get hired, right? So, and that is still true today. I, I'm curious from a moment in time, especially after COVID, given the she sessions that happened during COVID, it wasn't a recession. A lot of women walked away or were um, fired and dismissed because the more women than men are in the service economy, and that got hit really hard by COVID because women tend to be more carer than men are, and so their needs were in the home, so they walked away from their career to care for kids or elderly parents or what have you. In that process, I think because of where we are, thanks to technology in some way, a lot of women decided that instead of going back to the corporate world, that was the time that they could build something for themselves. And so, if you can't join them, beat them, kind of thing. Um, when you left BBH, was that kind of what you were trying to do? Like, you fought as much as you wanted could, now you went and built. Is that the moment that you decided to do that? That building was better than fighting the system to some extent?
No, not at all. And also, by the way, I don't agree with your characterization
Okay.
of why women left the workforce. I'll come back to that. But in my case, I basically turned 45 in 2005, and I had my very own personal midlife crisis in the sense that I'd always thought of 45 as kind of a midlife point. Obviously, by the way, in the happy assumption one lives to be 90, fingers crossed. But in a couple of years running up to it, I'd always thought on one's 45th birthday is the moment when you should pause, take stock, reflect and review. Where have I been? Where am I going? So on February 1, 2005, I duly did that. And that was the point at which I went, oh my God, I've just worked 16 years for the same advertising agency.
Mm.
By the way, amazing advertising agency. BBH, phenomenal. I'd worked for them in London, in Singapore, in New York. But I went, oh my God, I think it might be time to do something different. And then the problem was I hadn't the faintest idea what. So vast amounts of thought and angsting ensued. And eventually I went, if I want to review every possible option open to me, what is effectively the second half of my life, maybe the best thing to do is to put myself in the market very publicly and go, okay, here I am, what do you got? And see what comes. So I took a massive leap into the unknown. I resigned as chairman of BBH New York in the summer of 2005 without a job to go to. And honestly, it was the best thing that I ever did with my life. I am now evangelical about working for yourself because too many people make the mistake of thinking that a job is the safe option. It's not. Because in a job, you are at the complete mercy of management changes, industry downturns, marketplace dynamics. I always say, whose hands would you rather place your future in? Those of a large corporate entity who at the end of the day doesn't give a shit about you, or somebody who will always have your best interests at heart, i.e., you.
You. I love everything you said because I went through a similar thing, and for the longest time, um, that was my thinking. Like, I'm in a corporate, large organization, I'm safe. And taking that leap of building my own business was scary, especially with the family when I was the main breadwinner for the family. Moving country from the UK to the US and all the rest of it. It was a lot of pressure, but similar to you, I tell everybody that is interested in listening that it was the best decision, that working for yourself and choosing where you're putting your effort, where you don't have to obey to whatever your organization says you need to do business with or show up in a certain way is absolutely liberating. Tell me why you didn't agree with my characterization of women after COVID. I'm curious.
So women women do not leave the workforce by choice. Women do not leave the workforce because they care more for people. They leave the workforce because they are forced to, because they are forced to be the carers, and
100%.
because there is a complete lack of infrastructure that enables them to continue in the workforce while also being able to care for others. And there are two solutions to that. One is men shouldering the burden of caring as much as women. And just to give you, one demonstration of how that does not change but could change. I continue to do a number of things with the advertising industry, even though I left the corporate world over 20 years ago. So I am one of three campaign review committee chair people at an organization here in the US called the Ad Council.
Hmm.
Council basically brokers public service announcement campaigns between good causes, the brands that support those and underwrite them, and the advertising agencies that basically give their time pro bono to create very impactful work to help, those causes basically stimulate and inspire the action that they want to. So I was overseeing a group of ad people who, and what we do at the Ad Council is that we review campaigns.
Mm.
Our role is to make sure the work is the best it can be creatively. And we review them at the strategy stage, making sure the strategy is going to be effective, at the creative concept stage, and then at the, final rough cuts just before the work, goes out. So I and my CRC team were overseeing a campaign targeted specifically at the Hispanic market in the US
Hmm.
and focused on providing resources for caregivers. Because there are a lot of resources that the many people who are caring for others aren't aware of that are designed to help them, shortcuts to places they can find support. So, and this was a campaign targeted at the Hispanic market. And so the work was done by a Hispanic advertising agency. And in our review of, I think I had not been available for the previous stages, but I was there for the rough cut stage. So we reviewed three TV commercials in this campaign. And it was a lovely campaign. It was very moving about the burden of kind of caring for in this case older people in the community, so it's parents and family members. And so we all signed up on the ads, and then I said to the agency, there's just one thing, obviously looking at rough cuts, this is very late in the day, but there's something I want you to bear in mind going forwards. um, you know, in further iterations of this campaign, I would like you not to make the caregiver in every single one of these three different commercials
Oh,
a
wow.
woman. And as I said, the agency team was there, the agency leadership was there. The senior people in the agency were male. And one of them said to me, well, that's the way it is in our community. And I said, yes, but it does not have to be. And, I said to the team, advertising is a very powerful force in popular culture. And we have the opportunity to present caregiving as an aspirational role and to make it aspirational for men by depicting men doing the caregiving in this campaign. But that thought had not even crossed their minds because this is the way it is in our community. Okay? So there are absolutely ways to change the gender distribution of caregiving. But the second point I want to emphasize, because this is what a lot of my own work is focused on, is we need female lens infrastructure. And by the way, I'm obviously talking about infrastructure that the government and social services should be delivering on, but they are not.
Hmm.
The state of childcare in this country is ridiculous. And so we need infrastructure that is designed to enable women to live completely different lives and build completely different businesses and completely different careers because it is infrastructure designed through the female lens to fill all of the many, many holes in the government and social service system that absolutely takes no account of women's lived reality.
Even that is a lived experience on my part. First of all, I want to say thank you for explaining what you meant about women and caring and leaving the workspace, because I meant exactly the same thing as you, but I chose poor wording, and words matter. So I'll be more intentional in the future to talk about that. You have done in your career a lot of pitching from an ad perspective, from your own business. What are the things that we need to bear in mind as women? I was at one of the CES sessions a couple of years ago, and I said, come with numbers. But even that is not enough. You know, you were talking about proof and showing that what we can bring, but sometimes even that doesn't matter. People, like you said, they're contesting facts. So, what is the secret of pitching?
Sorry, pitching what specifically?
Pitching for your business, for your, getting funded for your business, anything that involves selling yourself in an interview or pitching your business to an investor.
Let me separate out different kind of pitches, okay? Because um, I recommend very different approaches. So first of all, um, one of the piece of advice I do give to people in a general business context, if you are pitching either internally, for a new project, or you are pitching for a new client, um, it doesn't matter how brilliant what you're pitching is. It doesn't matter how much money it will make the person you're pitching to. It doesn't matter how much it will cover them in glory. Um, no matter who your audience, there is only ever one question at the forefront of their minds when you are pitching anything. And it's the one question that you must have preemptively answered. And that question is very simply, how much more work is this going to make for me?
Mm.
So you have to have preemptively answered that question so that your pitch is basically, this is bloody brilliant. And all you have to do is sign a dotted line and write the check, and I make all this happen. And it doesn't mean you have to lift an additional finger. There is zero additional effort for you. That is the thing that everybody actually wants to know with any pitch. Now, that is in a business context. Pitching for funding as a female founder is a completely different ballgame. And I have had to adopt a very singular strategy that, in fact, is the strategy I recommend any female founder adopts regardless. Because while I've been forced to do this, it is actually what will work much more productively for female founders, bearing in mind that only 1.7% of all venture capital last year went to female founders.
Yep.
So, my challenge raising funding for my business, Make Love Not Porn, is I know that my kind of investors are out there, and there are a ton of them. And there are a ton of them in every single country in the world. In every single country in the world, there are large numbers of people who would and could invest in my business. They are impossible to find by conventional means because they all have one thing in common. Your willingness to fund Make Love Not Porn is entirely a function of your personal sexual journey. It's a function of your personal lens on sex and sexuality that's been shaped by your own experience of it. And I obviously have no way to research and target,
Mm.
not least because sex is the area where you cannot tell from the outside what anybody thinks on the inside. The people who look like they would totally get it don't. The people who look like complete prudes do. And so my strategy has to be I put what I'm doing out there all the time across all my social channels. I do every media interview I'm asked to because I have to make synaptic connections happen that will attract those investors to me. This is a long, slow, painful, and highly inefficient process, but every so often it works. And I recommend to other female founders that this is the approach they adopt because, I've been saying for years, never waste your time banging your head against closed doors. Instead, engineer yourself into a position where doors open automatically as you approach. Find the people who get it. I am always looking for the person who gets it. And there is absolutely no point wasting vast amounts of time and energy and hopefulness on the people who don't.
Because yeah, and and energy is not infinite, and so wasting it is not necessarily the best thing you can do. Um, I'm curious how y 2 things. One is in the past, and as we're talking about funding, you talked about the need for, building a financial ecosystem anew, kind of outside the norm of what is already existing, because that would free us from the limitations that, is ruled by white men for white men, looking at people that look like them when it comes to funding. How does that look like for you? Like building that own financial ecosystem that supports women?
So first of all, and this is what I've been saying for literally decades, I encourage every woman to set out unashamedly and unembarrassedly to make an absolute god I'm fucking shit ton of money. And I explained that I deliberately articulate like that because that is how much money I want us all to make. Because when we make that kind of money, we can use that money to fund other women, to support other women, help other women, donate to other women. And we have to build our own financial ecosystem to do that because the white male one ain't going to. Now, I really encourage women to think differently about how each one of us can do that from her particular perspective. And I say that because we cannot have too many of us coming at this from every possible angle. And I'm going to share with you the angle that I'm coming at it from. Um, I've fought a battle with my tiny team every single day for the past 17 years, not even to grow Make Love Not Porn, just to keep it alive. Basically, because every piece of business infrastructure other tech startups take for granted, we can't. The small print always says no adult content.
Mhm.
And that is all pervasive across every single aspect of my business in a way that people outside this sphere do not realize. I can't get funded. I can't get banked. Last year, Make Love Not Porn was debanked 3 times in 2 months. Got to be some kind of record. Fortunately, we found a fourth bank, so we're okay for the moment. Every single tech service I need to use to operate a video platform, hosting, encoding, encrypting, the terms of service always say no adult content. In every single case, I have to go to the people at the top of the company, explain what I'm doing, beg to be allowed to use their service. Sometimes they let me, sometimes they don't. This is a very labor intensive process. We never get to work with the best in class of anybody, business partner wise, and we never get to work with best value because we are in no position to negotiate. My two biggest pain points are number one, payments. PayPal won't work with adults, Stripe won't, mainstream credit card processors, fintech won't. I have to work with the murky subculture of adult friendly payment processors who charge extortionate fees.
Mhm.
I pay out 12% of my revenue every month in payment processing fees alone. When mainstream rates are 3% or less, that's a huge business growth inhibitor. And my other big pain point is that we are banned from advertising anywhere. We cannot promote ourselves on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Google, YouTube, Reddit. I ask you, look at what's on Reddit. They ban us for advertising. Twitter X, look at what's on there. They ban us for advertising. So I'm a great believer that when you have a truly world changing startup, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way around.
Mm.
If the ecosystem that is meant to enable you to scale and thrive shuts you out, build your own ecosystem. And so I have a product roadmap for Make Love Not Porn that is focused on infrastructure. At the heart of it is Make Love Not Porn, sex tech, very challenging to raise funding for.
Mhm.
And around it, I have an edtech product, a fintech product, an adtech product, an AI product. And by the way, I did not set out to be an edtech founder, a fintech founder, an adtech founder, an AI founder, but I have to be because I have to build solutions to my own problems. But I'm going to make them solutions that everyone else can use that make me an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. And I'll give you and our listeners just one example of that. So, precisely because of my payment challenges, I've said for years, I want to build the Stripe of sex tech because the first payments app that welcomes legal, ethical, transparent ventures like mine cleans up. There is a huge financial opportunity in so called restricted business, not just adult and sex tech like mine, but cannabis,
Yes.
psychedelics, crypto itself, and interestingly, a number of businesses you would not think would be restricted but are. So in the past few months, I came across two separate LinkedIn posts from two female founders who didn't know each other. Each of them is building a crowdfunding platform for different purposes. Each of them had integrated Stripe into their platform. Stripe has suddenly decided that crowdfunding is now restricted business and Stripe will not work with any crowdfunding platforms. Each of these women integrated Stripe at considerable cost into their platforms, and each of them been left high and dry because Stripe now refuses to work with them. So, like I said, there is a massive financial market opportunity in restricted business. So, I've spent years looking for the right partner to do this. I've finally found the right partner. And by the way, this is never thought I'd say these words positively, but this is a blockchain crypto play.
Okay.
I have a stablecoin partner. And so what we are doing is we are integrating our partner's technology into Make Love Not Porn. We're going to proof test this solution on our own platform for payments and also for payouts to our Make Love Not Porn stars, because we have all the same problems finding payout mechanisms. When it's working exactly as we want it to, we're going to turn this into a standalone product that everybody else can use. I'm calling it block free because I want to free us all from the blocks of fintech injustice. I've got a holding page at blockfree.us. And there are two very unique things about how we plan to operate our fintech product. The first is that it's going to operate what is consistent across all our Make Love Not Porn products, which is our 100% human curated model.
Mm-hmm.
We will vet every single applicant so that we can guarantee they are ethical, legal, and transparent. And secondly, and I've said this to our partner, the words blockchain, crypto, and stablecoin will appear nowhere near block free. The crypto community has not told its story well enough. Sam Bankman-Fried does not help matters. I want this product to be, as far as users are concerned, it's money in, money out. And if we can get that right, this will be the mass market, mainstream, everyday use case the crypto community has been desperate to find. Now, I'm being very pragmatic about this because the path to exit is very clear. When I prove it is possible to do what none of the big payment providers can, take restricted business payments safely and securely, giant fintech buys me for an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money, and that's how I fund Make Love Not Porn. So that's what I mean by we need to build our own financial ecosystem and we need to build our own infrastructure.
And that is a massive undertaking that you have in front of you.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because
It sounds like it.
no, and I say that, Carolina, because I'm doing this first and foremost for selfish reasons because I've got to solve my own problems. I cannot carry on paying 12% of my revenue every month.
Absolutely.
So I'm integrating this solution to lower my costs and increase my revenue on Make Love Not Porn.
Yeah.
But I see the opportunity when I do that to be able to then offer this solution to everybody else. And I'll tell you, Karen, especially since you interviewed the wonderful Polly of Unbound, I'm doing this for all of us, wonderful female sex tech founders like Polly included, because I want to unlock exits and liquidity for all of my fellow female sex tech founders. And I say that because we all face the same challenges. Every problem I've talked to you about, Polly has as well.
Yep.
And we all face the same challenges raising funding. And over the years, because I've been doing this for a very long time, 17 years, and I've known people like Polly for a long time as well, over the years, each of us manages to find a small group of investors who put a small amount of funding in. None of us are raising, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And here's the problem in the sex tech sector currently. An investor only invests in sex tech once. And let me explain what I mean by that. Many years ago, when I was trying to raise seed funding for Make Love Not Porn, I talked to an angel investor, a man who made a lot of money exiting his own company. And he had invested in one of the first pioneering sex toy companies, Jimmy Jane, founded in San Francisco. And this investor absolutely saw the potential in sex tech, invested in Jimmy Jane, and then had his eyes opened to the infrastructure problems. Their challenges distribution, with promotion, with marketing. And this investor said to me, I'm never touching this sector again. And at the moment, we cannot get more investors into sex tech because there is no liquidity. There are no exits. When I build infrastructure that enables us all to grow, to make a lot more money because our payment challenges get taken away, our financial, and also, by the way, the next product in my roadmap after that is an ad tech product to enable all us to advertise. When I build that infrastructure, I unlock growth for all of us and exits and liquidity that could transform this sector. That's what I mean by we've got to build our own ecosystem.
Yeah. It was interesting after the podcast with Polly how, and I wrote a Substack about it this morning, because it's not just the company, but anybody trying to lend a voice to this segment. My SEO advertising on YouTube was refused twice, one for political reasons, one for not being family friendly content. And we talked about sexual well-being from a woman perspective. It wasn't, anything that would remotely be disrespectful, rude, and we mentioned the administration. God forbid you do that nowadays. So it's interesting how, if we actually spent, if it was two men talking about Viagra and erectile dysfunction on a podcast, I'm sure that would not be deemed political at all. So I hear you. You said one thing that sounds counter to where we are right now in the industry, which is human curated content, which I love. How do you feel about AI?
So, what we are operating at Make Love Not Porn at the moment is HI, not AI, but with the intent of being able to train our own AI models in the right kind of way in due course. So, and I want to contextualize this for our listeners who may not be familiar with how unique my operating model is at Make Love Not Porn. The young white male founders of the giant tech platforms that dominate all our lives today, they are not the targets, online or offline, of harassment,
Yep.
abuse, sexual assault, racism, violence, rape, intimate image abuse. Therefore, they did not and they do not proactively design for the prevention of any of those things on their platforms. And we see the results of that around us every single day. Those of us who are most at risk every single day, women, Black people, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disabilities. We design safe spaces and safe experiences, but we don't get funded. As I said earlier, only 1.7% of all venture capital last year went to female founders. And that is why we have still not seen how much safer, better, happier, and by the way, way more lucrative the future of the internet and technology could be when it's designed and built through the female lens. And these are the two key words: at scale.
Mm.
So I designed Make Love Not Porn through the female lens to be the safest place on the internet, because I designed around what everybody else should have, nobody else did: 100% human curation. There's no self-publishing. Our curators watch every video submitted from beginning to end before we approve or reject and we publish it. We review every member profile post before we approve or reject and we publish it. We review every comment on every video before we approve, reject, and we publish it. We can vouch for every single piece of content on our platform in a way that no one else can. And the key point about that is we are tiny, bootstrapping, have no money, and we've human curated everything for 13 years. Imagine what Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, OpenAI could do with their billions if they chose to. Safety on the internet is not a matter of viability, it's a matter of will. It's entirely feasible, but the white guys don't give a shit because it doesn't happen to them. So every product on my roadmap operates as 100% human curated model, but with the intention of training up our own models on what is ethical female lens operations that will give rise to very different forms of AI.
Yes, and that is the core of it, right? Is the fact that AI in training has to have the right data, and the right mindset of the people behind it that set it up in the way to be ethical. If that, to your point, if it's not even will, is a question of focus, is a question of, it's not that they don't want to, they don't see the need for, because it doesn't impact them, right? Um, we almost at time, and I know I can talk to you for another hour at least, but I want to end on women and where we are now. You are you all the time, and you're bold, you're direct, and I love that. And there are so many women still that are told that they need to make themselves softer, smile more, make themselves more approachable. How do we convince women, other than having people like you that can show that they can be successful by being you? How do we convince, especially younger women, not to make themselves small, not to try and fit in with the boys? I think in tech in particular, I see that so often, that when women make it, they want to be part of the boys because they think that that is the only way that they're going to stay where they are or move, further up. And I'm sure that is discouraging to a lot of younger women looking at the opportunity that there is, especially in tech.
Yep, no, I mean, it's very simple. Stay away from people and places and things that make you feel bad about yourself. And you know when people are making you feel bad about yourself. The moment you feel that, get the fuck out.
Yes. Why would I support people that don't want me in the room? Right? Is, I think, Brennan. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have a personal coaching practice, which is part of how I support myself alongside Make Love Not Porn. And I coach women and men across a whole range of different industries. But I coach a huge number of brilliant women who have no idea how brilliant they are, because for their entire careers, they've been held back by men, beaten down by men, sabotaged by men, had their ambitions derailed by men. And, it's my job working with them to change that. But I use a saying very regularly. I'm half English, half Chinese. My English grandmother was a wonderful woman. She was Christian, but she was very interested in Buddhism.
Mhm.
And a recurring childhood memory is of my grandmother, saying Buddhist sayings to me and my sisters. And there was one saying she had, which I always remembered, and which I've had many occasions to repeat in my coaching sessions. Um, and the saying goes, "The fool says, evil cannot touch me, but drop by drop the pitcher fills." And what I say to women is, you may think you can stick it out in this company another couple of years to, till the kids go to college or whatever. And I'm here to tell you that every daily micro sexism, micro racism, microaggression is destroying your soul. It's eroding your confidence. It's eradicating your belief in what you are capable of. Get the fuck out.
That's what I did in 2013, and, I never looked back. Be exactly. Oh my god, I'm getting emotional because of that. Thank you. I really appreciate the time. I don't know why I'm so emotional.
No, no,
The
no, no, that's
insight,
lovely. Lovely.
um, thank you. Hopefully, we get to advertise this. Um, but people can find you where? Where do you engage in conversation?
Sure.
Where I'm gonna go and actually sign up for your coaching sessions because clearly I
Fantastic.
have so much more to learn.
So listeners, if you believe in what I'm doing, please support me. Go to makelovenotporn.com and subscribe. Go to makelovenotporn.academy. We've just taken this live under the radar. This is our sex education extension of what we do. It's free to access, but you can support us by becoming a member to help fund our ability to operate. You can find me on LinkedIn. Follow me there. I'm at Cindy Gallop. We're at Make Love Not Porn on Instagram and X. And I have a Substack called Dear Cindy, where people send me questions and I answer a question a week across any topic you like: business, sex, negotiation, money, tech, whatever. So do send any questions you have for me to Dear Cindy because I really enjoy answering them.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. I really appreciate the time and I'm looking forward reading and following all that is coming from you and hopefully taking advantage of the new infrastructure that you're building. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.